Tonight, you're about to discover the most peaceful civilization in human history, a land where emperors built gardens as temples to tranquility, where philosophers found enlightenment in the simple act of watching water flow over stones, and where millions of people lived their entire lives guided by a single, beautiful principle: harmony with the natural world. Imagine falling asleep to the gentle sound of bamboo wind chimes in an ancient Chinese garden, where moonlight filters through delicate paper screens and the soft fragrance of jasmine drifts on the evening air. For the next hour, this is exactly where you'll be, transported to ancient China, a civilization that mastered the art of finding peace in a chaotic world. Close your eyes now, and let your breathing slow and deepen. Feel yourself sinking into comfort as we embark on this peaceful voyage through dynasties and centuries, through the wisdom of ancient sages and the daily rhythms of people who lived in harmony with the natural world. In the next hour, we'll walk together through bamboo forests where scholars once meditated, drift along the Silk Road where caravans carried precious goods across vast deserts, and rest in the tranquil gardens where emperors found solace from the weight of ruling millions. Each story we explore tonight is rooted in historical truth, drawn from archaeological discoveries, ancient texts, and scholarly research that has revealed the rich tapestry of Chinese civilization. Let the gentle cadence of these tales carry you toward peaceful rest, as we discover a world where tea ceremonies became moving meditations, where the art of calligraphy transformed writing into spiritual practice, and where the philosophy of balance, yin and yang, guided daily life for countless generations. Take another deep breath, and let us begin our journey into the ancient Middle Kingdom. Our story begins nearly 5,000 years ago, in the fertile valleys carved by the Yellow River, known to the Chinese as the Huanghe. Picture, if you will, a landscape of rolling lush hills, their golden soil rich with nutrients carried by wind and water across countless millennia. Here, in this cradle of Chinese civilization, the first agricultural communities began to flourish around 3000 BCE. The Yellow River earned its name from the fine yellow silt it carries, over 1 billion tons each year, creating a landscape that seems painted in warm, earthen hues. Ancient Chinese called this waterway China's sorrow because of its tendency to flood, yet also China's pride for the life it brought to the valley. Archaeological evidence from sites like Banpo, discovered in 1953, reveals villages where people lived in circular earth lodges, their floors carefully crafted from stamped clay, and their roofs supported by wooden posts that archaeologists can still identify today. In these early settlements, life moved with the rhythm of the seasons. Spring brought the careful planting of millet and later rice, as communities learned to channel the river's waters through ingenious irrigation systems. The Yangshao culture, which flourished from 5000 to 3000 BCE, left behind beautiful painted pottery decorated with swirling patterns and stylized birds, designs that seem to dance even today when we view them in museums. Let your mind drift to those ancient potters, sitting by their kilns in the evening light, their hands shaping clay that had been mixed with careful attention to consistency and texture. The warmth of the fire would have been comforting as they painted their vessels with mineral pigments, red iron oxide creating warm rust tones, black manganese adding deep shadows, white kaolin providing highlights that caught the firelight. The legendary Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, is said to have ruled during this early period around 2697 BCE. While historians debate his historical existence, his story speaks to universal human themes that resonate across cultures. According to ancient texts like the records of the Grand Historian compiled by Sima Qian in the 1st century BCE, the Yellow Emperor was credited with numerous innovations: the invention of the compass, the development of traditional Chinese medicine, and the creation of the first calendar. More touching still are the smaller discoveries that archaeologists have uncovered, evidence of daily life that connects us to these ancient people across the vast expanse of time. At Banpo, researchers found what appears to be an ancient playground, with small clay marbles and gaming pieces that suggest children played games not so different from those we might recognize today. They found fish hooks carved from bone, indicating long, patient hours spent by the riverbank, waiting for the gentle tug that meant dinner for the family. The development of agriculture in the Yellow River Valley represents one of humanity's great turning points. As communities learned to cultivate crops reliably, they could support larger populations and begin the specialization of labor that would eventually lead to the complex civilization we know as ancient China. The transition from hunting and gathering to farming happened gradually, over many generations, as people learned to read the subtle signs of weather and season that determined the success of their crops. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of those early farmers as they watched their first successful harvest of foxtail millet, a hardy grain that became the staple crop of northern China. Picture the community celebrations that must have marked the completion of successful harvests, with families gathering to share food and stories as the yellow field stretched endlessly under autumn skies. As communities grew more stable and prosperous, they began to develop the distinctive elements of Chinese culture that would endure for millennia. The earliest Chinese writing systems emerged during this period, evolving from simple pictographs carved into oracle bones, pieces of turtle shell and ox scapula used for divination. These oracle bones, discovered in massive quantities at Anyang in the early 20th century, provide our earliest glimpse into Chinese written language and offer fascinating insights into the concerns of ancient rulers and common people alike. The questions inscribed on oracle bones reveal universal human preoccupations. Will the harvest be good this year? Should we go to war with our neighbors? Will the king's illness pass? When is the best time to undertake a long journey? These concerns, etched in Bronze Age script, remind us that despite the vast cultural and temporal distance, the people of ancient China worried about the same fundamental things that concern people today: health, prosperity, safety, and the uncertain future. As you rest now, feel yourself connected to this ancient chain of human experience, to the countless generations who looked up at the same stars and wondered about their place in the cosmic order. As we drift deeper into our journey through ancient China, we arrive at one of history's most enduring dynasties, the Zhou, who ruled for nearly 800 years from 1046 to 256 BCE. The Zhou dynasty gave us one of humanity's most profound political concepts, the mandate of heaven, or Tianming, the idea that legitimate rulers govern not by force alone, but by moral authority granted by the cosmos itself. Picture the ancient Chinese cosmology as they understood it. Heaven, or Tian, was not a place but a principle. The natural order that governed all things. Under this vast sky, emperors ruled as intermediaries between the celestial realm and earthly affairs. When a dynasty ruled justly, with virtue and wisdom, heaven smiled upon the land. Harvests were bountiful, rivers flowed in their proper courses, and peace prevailed. But when rulers became corrupt or cruel, heaven would withdraw its mandate, often signaling its displeasure through natural disasters, famines, or social upheaval. This concept revolutionized governance in ways that still influence political thought today. Unlike the divine right of kings in other cultures, the mandate of heaven was conditional; it could be lost. This meant that rebellion against a tyrannical ruler was not just permitted but morally necessary, for heaven itself had withdrawn its support. The Zhou used this concept to justify their overthrow of the previous Shang dynasty, claiming that the last Shang king had become so corrupt that heaven had transferred its mandate to them. In this philosophical landscape, a remarkable figure emerged around 551 BCE, Kong Qiu, known to the world as Confucius. Born in the small state of Lu during a time of political fragmentation and social upheaval, Confucius would develop a system of ethics and governance that emphasized moral cultivation, respect for tradition, and the importance of harmonious relationships. Let your mind settle into the quiet courtyard of Confucius's school, where the master taught beneath ancient trees whose leaves rustled with centuries of accumulated wisdom. His students, drawn from various social backgrounds, gathered each morning to discuss the fundamental questions of human existence. How should we treat our parents and elders? What makes a person truly virtuous? How can society achieve harmony without sacrificing individual dignity? The Analects, compiled by his disciples after his death, preserve Confucius's gentle yet profound teachings. Is it not a pleasure, he asked, to have friends come from afar? This simple question reflects his belief that learning and friendship were among life's greatest joys. His concept of ren, often translated as benevolence or humaneness, emphasized that true nobility came not from birth or wealth, but from the cultivation of compassion and moral character. Confucius taught that society functioned best when everyone understood their role and fulfilled their duties with sincerity and care. Children should honor their parents with filial piety, or shao. Rulers should govern with wisdom and benevolence. Friends should offer loyalty and honest counsel to one another. This wasn't rigid hierarchy but rather a web of mutual obligation and care that bound communities together. The Zhou dynasty also gave us the I Ching, or Book of Changes, one of the world's oldest texts and a cornerstone of Chinese philosophy. This ancient book of divination and wisdom emerged from the Chinese observation that all of life consists of constant change and transformation. The I Ching's 64 hexagrams, composed of broken and unbroken lines, represent different configurations of change and provide guidance for navigating life's uncertainties. Imagine ancient Chinese scholars consulting the I Ching by casting yarrow stalks or coins, then contemplating the resulting hexagram in quiet meditation. The process itself was as important as the answer, a moment of pause and reflection that helped the questioner step back from immediate concerns and consider deeper patterns and possibilities. The wisdom of the I Ching lies not in fortune-telling but in its recognition that change is the only constant, and that wise action comes from understanding and flowing with natural rhythms rather than fighting against them. During the Zhou period, the Chinese concept of Wu Wei also began to develop, the principle of non-action or effortless action. This doesn't mean passivity, but rather acting in harmony with natural forces and circumstances, like water flowing around rocks in a stream. Wu Wei suggests that the most effective actions often appear effortless because they work with rather than against the grain of reality. The Zhou dynasty's agricultural innovations created the prosperity that supported this philosophical flowering. They developed sophisticated irrigation systems, crop rotation techniques, and iron agricultural tools that dramatically increased productivity. The surplus food this created allowed for the emergence of a scholarly class who could devote themselves to questions of ethics, governance, and the meaning of human existence. Archaeological discoveries from Zhou sites reveal a society of remarkable sophistication. Bronze workers created vessels of extraordinary beauty and technical skill, their surfaces decorated with intricate patterns of dragons, phoenixes, and geometric designs that required years of training to master. These weren't merely decorative objects but ritual vessels used in ceremonies that connected the living with their ancestors and the cosmic order. The Zhou belief in ancestral veneration created a profound sense of continuity between past, present, and future. Families maintained detailed genealogies and performed regular ceremonies to honor deceased relatives, believing that the spirits of the dead continued to influence the affairs of the living. This wasn't fearful superstition but a warm recognition of the ongoing bonds between generations, the understanding that we are all part of an unbroken chain of human experience stretching back to the very beginning of time. As you rest now, feel yourself connected to this ancient wisdom, to the understanding that you too are part of this great continuum of human experience, held gently by the countless generations who came before and those who will come after. As the centuries flowed by like water in a mountain stream, another profound philosophy emerged in ancient China, Taoism, or Taoism, a way of understanding existence that emphasized harmony with the natural world and the cultivation of inner peace. While Confucius focused on social harmony and moral cultivation, the early Taoist sages turned their attention to the mysterious source of all existence, the Tao, or Way. The legendary founder of Taoism, Laozi, is said to have lived during the 6th century BCE, though like many ancient figures, the details of his life are wrapped in the soft mists of legend and time. According to tradition, Laozi served as a court archivist, spending his days among ancient scrolls and historical records. But as he grew older, he became increasingly disillusioned with the artificial complexities of court life and human society's tendency to complicate what was naturally simple. Picture the aging sage as he made his decision to leave civilization behind, loading his few possessions onto the back of a water buffalo and heading west toward the mountains. At the border pass, the gatekeeper, recognizing his wisdom, begged Laozi to leave behind some record of his insights before disappearing into the wilderness. In response, Laozi spent 3 days composing the Tao Te Ching, a text of just over 5,000 Chinese characters that would become one of the most translated and influential books in human history. The opening lines of the Tao Te Ching capture its essential mystery: the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. This suggests that ultimate reality lies beyond the reach of language and conceptual thinking. It can only be experienced directly, like the warmth of sunlight on your face or the sound of wind moving through pine branches. Let your mind rest now in the Taoist understanding of nature's effortless perfection. Consider how rivers naturally find their way to the sea, not through struggle or force, but by following the path of least resistance. How trees grow toward the light without anxious planning, their roots deepening into earth while their branches reach toward sky. How the seasons change without hurry or delay, each flowing naturally into the next in an endless cycle of transformation. The Tao Te Ching teaches that human beings, as part of nature, function best when they align themselves with these natural principles. The concept of Wu Wei, which we touched upon earlier, becomes central in Taoist thought, the art of acting without forcing, of accomplishing without striving, of leading without dominating. It's the difference between swimming against a current and learning to move with the flow of water, using its energy rather than fighting against it. Zhuangzi, another great Taoist philosopher who lived around 369 to 286 BCE, illustrated these principles through stories and parables that continue to enchant readers today. His writings, collected in the book that bears his name, blend profound wisdom with gentle humor and whimsical imagination. One of his most famous tales tells of a man who dreamed he was a butterfly, only to wake and wonder whether he was now a butterfly dreaming of being a man. This playful story points to deeper questions about the nature of identity and reality that philosophers continue to explore today. In Zhuangzi's stories, we meet humble craftsmen whose mastery comes not from rigid technique but from years of patient practice that have allowed them to move beyond conscious effort into a state of natural skill. He tells of a butcher who carves an ox with such perfect understanding of its anatomy that his knife never dulls, and of a wheelwright whose wooden wheels are perfectly round because his hands have learned to feel the precise balance between too tight and too loose. These tales suggest that true mastery in any field comes not from forcing results but from developing such intimate understanding that skilled action flows naturally, without self-consciousness or strain. This principle applies equally to the craftsperson, the athlete, the artist, or anyone seeking to develop skill with patience and mindful attention. Taoist influence on Chinese culture extended far beyond philosophy into art, medicine, and daily life. Traditional Chinese medicine, with its emphasis on maintaining balance between opposing forces, reflects Taoist principles. The concept of qi, the life energy that flows through all things, comes from Taoist understanding of the universe as a dynamic field of energy in constant transformation. The practice of qigong, which combines gentle movement, breathing, and meditation, emerged from Taoist longevity practices. Ancient Taoist masters spent countless hours in mountain retreats, developing techniques for cultivating inner peace and physical vitality. They observed that the longest-lived creatures, turtles, cranes, trees, moved slowly and breathed deeply, and incorporated these observations into practices designed to promote health and spiritual insight. In Taoist temples hidden away in mountain valleys, monks and nuns lived lives of elegant simplicity. Their days began before dawn with quiet meditation, followed by gentle exercises that mimicked the movements of animals. The flowing grace of swimming fish, the grounded stability of standing trees, the alert stillness of wading cranes. Their meals were simple but nutritious, often consisting of vegetables grown in temple gardens, grains, and herbal teas that supported both physical health and mental clarity. The Taoist aesthetic influenced Chinese art in profound ways, creating a tradition of landscape painting that sought to capture not just the appearance of mountains and rivers but their essential spirit. These paintings, with their misty peaks rising from cloud-filled valleys, invite contemplation rather than mere observation. They suggest the infinite depth of nature and humanity's small but significant place within the larger cosmos. Consider the famous Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai, deeply influenced by Taoist thought, who wrote verses that capture the essence of natural spontaneity and freedom. His poems speak of drinking wine under the moon, of finding friendship with mountains and streams, of living with such presence and appreciation that each moment becomes complete in itself. As you sink deeper into relaxation tonight, let yourself embody this Taoist wisdom, the understanding that rest itself is a form of Wu Wei, a natural letting go that requires no effort or strain. Like a leaf falling gently from a tree, allow yourself to settle into sleep with trust in the natural processes that restore and renew us each night. Now we journey forward through the centuries to what many historians consider the golden age of Chinese civilization, the Tang dynasty, which flourished from 618 to 907 CE. Picture yourself in the great capital city of Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, which during the Tang period was the largest city in the world, home to over 1 million people from dozens of different cultures and nations. Chang'an was laid out in a perfect grid pattern, with wide boulevards lined with locust trees whose leaves created dappled shadows on the packed earth roads. The city's design reflected Chinese cosmological principles, the imperial palace at the north, oriented toward the pole star, with the rest of the city arranged in harmonious symmetry around this central axis. At night, the city would have glowed with the warm light of oil lamps and candles, their flames flickering in windows and doorways like earthbound stars. The Tang dynasty represented a high point of Chinese openness to the world, a time when the Silk Road trade routes brought merchants, diplomats, scholars, and artists from across Asia to Chinese markets and courts. In Chang'an's Western market, you might have encountered Persian merchants selling precious gems, Arab traders offering exotic spices, Indian monks sharing Buddhist scriptures, and Central Asian musicians performing on instruments that would influence Chinese music for centuries to come. The Silk Road itself was not a single route but a network of paths stretching over 4,000 miles from Chang'an to the Mediterranean Sea. Caravans would form in the city's outskirts, sometimes consisting of hundreds of camels loaded with silk, porcelain, tea, and other Chinese luxury goods. The journey westward took many months, crossing some of the world's most challenging terrain, the Taklamakan Desert, the Pamir Mountains, and vast steppes where the horizon seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Let your imagination follow one of these caravans as they prepare to depart Chang'an in the early morning hours. The merchants check their loads one final time, ensuring that the precious silk is wrapped in waterproof covers and that the delicate porcelain is cushioned with soft wool and leather. The camel drivers, weathered by years of desert travel, speak quietly among themselves in multiple languages, sharing information about water sources, weather patterns, and the political situation in distant kingdoms. As the caravan moves westward, leaving the fertile valleys of China behind, the landscape gradually transforms. The lush green of rice paddies gives way to grasslands, then to the stark beauty of desert terrain where the silence is so complete that the soft bells on the camels' harnesses become a gentle, rhythmic meditation. At night, the merchants and drivers gather around small fires, sharing stories and songs from their various homelands while the stars will overhead in patterns that guided their navigation across trackless wastes. The Buddhist influence that traveled these same routes transformed Chinese spirituality and art. Buddhist monasteries became centers of learning, their libraries preserving not only religious texts but also works on astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. The famous Dunhuang Caves, a complex of Buddhist temples carved into cliffs along the Silk Road, contain some of the world's finest religious art, murals depicting celestial beings, bodhisattvas, and scenes of enlightenment rendered in colors that remain vivid after more than 1,000 years. Buddhist meditation practices introduced new dimensions to Chinese spiritual life. The concept of mindfulness, maintaining present moment awareness while going about daily activities, complemented Taoist naturalness and Confucian moral cultivation. Meditation halls in Chinese monasteries became spaces of profound quiet, where monks and lay practitioners learned to observe their thoughts and emotions without judgment, gradually developing the inner stillness that Buddhists call Buddha nature, the peaceful awareness that lies at the core of every being. The Tang dynasty was also the golden age of Chinese poetry, producing masters like Li Bai and Du Fu whose verses continue to move readers across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Tang poets developed the art of capturing profound emotion and insight in remarkably condensed form, often in just 4 or 8 lines that somehow contain entire worlds of meaning. Li Bai, known as the poet immortal, wrote with spontaneous brilliance often enhanced by wine and inspired by natural settings. His poem, Quiet Night Thought, captures the universal experience of homesickness in just 4 simple lines about moonlight falling through a window. Du Fu, called the poet sage, wrote with compassionate attention to social justice and human suffering, his verses revealing deep empathy for the common people affected by war and political upheaval. Tang poetry gatherings were intimate affairs, often held in garden pavilions overlooking lotus ponds or mountain streams. Poets would compose verses inspired by the immediate surroundings, the way morning mist clung to distant hills, the sound of temple bells carrying across valleys, the sight of wild geese flying south as winter approached. These gatherings combined literary appreciation with friendship, wine, and philosophical discussion, creating a model of refined leisure that influenced Chinese culture for generations. The Tang period also saw remarkable achievements in art and technology. Chinese artisans perfected the creation of porcelain, developing techniques for creating ceramics so fine and translucent that they seemed to glow with inner light. Tang pottery figures, discovered in tombs, show us a cosmopolitan society where Chinese, Persian, Arab, and Central Asian fashions mingled freely. These figurines depict merchants, musicians, dancers, and soldiers from many different cultures, all participating in the vibrant life of Tang China. During this period, Chinese inventors developed woodblock printing, creating the world's first printed books and making literature accessible to broader segments of society. The Diamond Sutra, printed in 868 CE and discovered in the Dunhuang caves, represents the world's oldest known printed book with a date. The text itself, a Buddhist scripture about the nature of reality and compassion, seems fitting for this revolutionary technology that would eventually transform human access to knowledge. As you rest in this moment, imagine yourself as a traveler on the ancient Silk Road, settling down for the night at a caravanserai, one of the rest stops that dotted the trade routes. The day's journey is complete, your camel is content with its evening meal, and you lie back on soft carpets to gaze up at the star-filled desert sky, feeling gratitude for the day's safe travel and anticipation for the adventures that tomorrow might bring. Our journey through time now brings us to the Song Dynasty, 960–1279 CE, an era often called China's Renaissance for its remarkable achievements in science, technology, philosophy, and the arts. While perhaps less famous than the Tang dynasty, the Song period represents the flowering of Chinese civilization in its most refined and sophisticated form. During the Song dynasty, China's population exceeded 100 million people for the first time in human history, supported by agricultural innovations that included new strains of rice from Southeast Asia. These early ripening varieties allowed farmers to harvest 2 crops per year instead of 1, creating the prosperity that funded one of history's great cultural achievements. Let yourself drift into the peaceful atmosphere of a Song dynasty scholar's garden, carefully designed to create harmony between human habitation and natural beauty. These gardens were living works of art, composed with the same aesthetic principles that guided Chinese painting and poetry. Every element had symbolic meaning. Rocks represented mountains and endurance, water symbolized life and movement, plants embodied the cycle of seasons and renewal. The scholar's day began before dawn with the practice of calligraphy, brush moving across rice paper in characters that were simultaneously words, artworks, and meditations. Chinese calligraphy elevated writing into a spiritual practice where the calligrapher's inner state was revealed through the flow and rhythm of brushstrokes. The four treasures of the study, brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, were carefully maintained and deeply valued, for they were the tools through which thoughts became visible and emotions found expression. Song dynasty innovations revolutionized daily life throughout China. They perfected the use of coal for heating and cooking, developed the magnetic compass for navigation, and created paper money, the world's first government-issued currency. Perhaps most importantly for human happiness, they refined the art of tea cultivation and preparation, transforming tea drinking from medicine into one of life's great pleasures. The Chinese tea ceremony, while less formal than its Japanese counterpart, embodied principles of mindfulness and appreciation that enhanced daily life. The careful selection of tea leaves, the heating of water to just the right temperature, the warming of cups and teapot, the timing of steeping, each step required attention and presence that transformed a simple beverage into a moment of meditation. Picture yourself in a Song Dynasty tea house, where scholars, merchants, and artisans gathered to discuss philosophy, poetry, and current events over cups of fragrant tea. The conversation would flow as naturally as the tea itself, moving from serious topics to gentle humor, from personal concerns to cosmic questions, all enhanced by the shared ritual of drinking tea that created intimacy and trust among participants. Song philosophers developed Neo-Confucianism, a synthesis of Confucian ethics with Buddhist insights and Taoist naturalness. Thinkers like Zhu Xi, 1130 to 1200, explored questions about the relationship between principle, li, and material force, qi, developing sophisticated theories about how universal principles manifest in particular circumstances. Their insights influenced education, governance, and daily ethical decision-making throughout East Asia for centuries. The Song period also saw the flourishing of Chinese medical knowledge. Physicians compiled comprehensive medical texts that combined empirical observation with theoretical understanding of how the body's energy systems maintained health and healed disease. Song medical illustrations show detailed knowledge of anatomy and physiology, while their pharmaceutical texts document hundreds of herbal remedies that are still used in traditional Chinese medicine today. Song artisans achieved unprecedented refinement in porcelain production, creating ceramics of such beauty and technical perfection that they were treasured throughout Asia and eventually Europe. Song porcelain combined elegant simplicity of form with subtle glazes that seemed to capture the essence of natural materials, the soft gray-green of jade, the warm brown of autumn leaves, the pristine white of fresh snow. As night settles around you now, imagine yourself as a Song dynasty scholar completing the day's studies, putting away brushes and scrolls as darkness fills the garden outside your window. The day's work is done, the evening meal has been shared with family, and now comes the peaceful transition toward sleep, guided by the understanding that rest is as essential to human flourishing as activity, that dreams are as valuable as waking thoughts. As our journey through ancient China draws toward its peaceful conclusion, we arrive at the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644 CE. The period when many of the monuments and cultural achievements we associate with China today reached their final form. The Ming emperors restored Chinese rule after overthrowing the Mongol Yuan dynasty, ushering in an era of cultural consolidation and architectural magnificence. It was during the Ming period that the Great Wall took the form we recognize today. While walls had been built along China's northern borders for over 1,000 years, Ming engineers and workers connected and rebuilt these fortifications into a continuous barrier stretching over 13,000 miles across mountains, deserts, and grasslands. Imagine the countless workers who labored on this monumental project, soldiers, peasants, and prisoners working together under the vast sky of northern China. The construction required intimate knowledge of local terrain, as the wall followed the natural contours of the landscape, climbing ridgelines and descending into valleys with an organic quality that makes it appear to have grown from the earth itself. The daily routine of these workers began before sunrise, with simple meals of millet porridge and pickled vegetables. They worked with hand tools, hammers, chisels, and baskets for carrying stone and earth, using techniques that had been refined over generations. Despite the enormous scale of the project, each section was built with careful attention to detail, using local materials that helped the wall blend naturally into its surroundings. What makes the Great Wall remarkable is not just its size but its integration with the landscape. Ming architects understood that the most effective fortification worked with natural geography rather than against it. The wall incorporates mountain peaks as natural bastions, uses river valleys as defensive moats, and follows ridge lines that provide commanding views of the surrounding territory. As workers labored on remote sections of the wall, they developed their own communities and traditions. Archaeological evidence suggests that families often lived near construction sites for years, creating temporary villages complete with workshops, schools for children, and temples where workers could pray for safety and success. These communities left behind pottery, tools, and personal items that provide touching glimpses into the daily lives of ordinary people contributing to this extraordinary achievement. The Ming dynasty also represented the pinnacle of Chinese garden design, with examples like the humble administrator's garden in Suzhou demonstrating how human creativity could enhance rather than compete with natural beauty. These gardens were designed as three-dimensional poems, where every view had been carefully composed to create feelings of peace, contemplation, and aesthetic pleasure. A traditional Chinese garden incorporated the principle of borrowed scenery, designing views that included distant mountains, pagodas, or other landmarks beyond the garden's boundaries, making the space feel larger and more connected to the broader landscape. Winding paths encouraged slow, meditative walking, with stopping points at pavilions, bridges, and viewpoints where visitors could pause to appreciate particular compositions of water, stone, and plants. The sound design of these gardens was as important as their visual elements. Running water provided a constant, soothing background, whether from streams, fountains, or waterfalls. Bamboo groves created gentle rustling sounds in even the slightest breeze. Wind chimes and bells added delicate musical notes that seemed to celebrate each passing moment. During the Ming period, the four arts of the scholar, qin, music, qi, board games, shu, calligraphy, and hua, painting, reached their highest refinement. These weren't mere hobbies but integral aspects of personal cultivation, ways of developing sensitivity, concentration, and appreciation for beauty that enhanced all aspects of life. The qin, a 7-string zither, produced music of remarkable subtlety and expression. Qin music was typically performed in intimate settings, a scholar's study, a garden pavilion, or a mountain retreat, where the gentle, contemplative melodies could be appreciated without distraction. The music itself embodied Taoist principles, with long silences between notes that were considered as important as the sounds themselves. As our hour together draws to a close, let yourself rest in the accumulated wisdom of these ancient Chinese traditions. The understanding that human life is part of larger cycles of growth and rest, activity and contemplation, engagement and withdrawal. The recognition that true happiness comes not from acquiring more but from appreciating deeply what we already have. Feel yourself held by the gentle wisdom of countless generations who understood that each day's end calls for grateful acknowledgement of what has been accomplished and peaceful surrender to the restorative power of sleep. Like a lotus closing its petals as evening falls, allow yourself to fold inward toward rest, trusting in the natural rhythms that have sustained human life for thousands of years. The moon that rises tonight is the same moon that shone on Tang poets composing verses, on Song scholars practicing calligraphy, on Ming workers building the Great Wall. We are all part of this continuing story of human experience, this great river of consciousness flowing through time, carrying forward the wisdom and dreams of all who came before. Rest now in this knowledge, letting the gentle currents of sleep carry you toward peace and renewal, knowing that you wake tomorrow as part of this eternal human journey toward understanding, compassion, and harmony with the world around us. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler. Until we meet again in the landscape of stories and the geography of wisdom.